Hi, everyone.
Hello, and welcome to the Trump Tyranny Tracker. Olga Lautman is here, of course. I'm Shalev from Narativ, where we do the biggest stories in authoritarian creep every day. Olga, you've been ranting and raving all over Substack about the sort of non deliverables on the Ukraine Russia talks. What happened, in your opinion? And of course, I got to say up front, you're always right. You're always right. You were right again, and I just hat off to you. Hats up to you. You were right about your analysis about what was going on there, and tell us what you think is going to happen next.
it's not, I'm not right about everything. It's about when it comes to Ukraine, just because I know Ukraine, I know Russia, so I can basically predict it in a coma of what is going to happen. Um, so basically, we've already touched on it all week that we've been doing these lives. That this is all a sham. This is all theater. Nothing is going to be accomplished. Putin obviously called for it first, and he ended up not even showing
Isn't
up.
that crazy? I mean, the guy calls for he makes a big announcement. Let's have the talks. We want to have the talks, and then he doesn't show up.
I mean, frankly, I wouldn't show up either if I were him because he deserves a healthy dose of Novichok. I'd be like, here. So, frankly, I would not be leaving Russia to go face off with Zelensky. But no, he didn't show up. Trump obviously, was showing up until he found out that his, BFF was not showing up, and then suddenly I have things to tie up in the region, so I frankly don't have time for this either. Had Putin actually been in Turkey, Trump would be, on the first
Of course.
Qatari jet, any jet on a train to get to Putin. But and that's
I,
it. So this ended up in nowhere. Where at the same back to square one. I mean, it's not going anywhere with this whole nonsense of negotiations. You know my thoughts on it. There's nothing
yeah.
to negotiate. Russia knows where the border is. They can leave the sovereign country, get the hell out, return the 21,000 kidnapped children, and pay reparations for destroying a sovereign country. So I mean, this is what needs to happen, and until that happens,
Well, this
we're
was
not
really a
getting it.
test, right? I mean, the Europeans set up this test to see if Putin would show up, and
Oh, they
they
knew he wouldn't
and they
show up,
knew
right?
and they knew he wouldn't. But they also said to Trump, stay out of these negotiations. And if we don't succeed, he agreed. He won't obviously follow through, but he agreed to introduce new sanctions against Russia. The Europeans seem quite, emboldened by this. They might go ahead and do these sanctions. Who knows? Against and what will the United States do then? Will they respond as well? It doesn't look to me like they will. It looks to me like Rubio is out there saying there needs to now be a face-to-face between Trump and
Hmm.
Putin, which means they're
Yes.
just finding ways to extend it. But it does appear that maybe the European countries are now going to take more economic sanctions against these ghost fleets and these other Russian instruments of power.
Yeah, no, the Europeans are definitely going to follow through. And, look, it is in their best interest. And just to hop over to the European front, three things happened very quickly. One, Poland is transforming the whole country in a war footing. Right now, they're putting mines on the borders. They're moving, military equipment because they know that war is coming with Russia. And they are basically preparing everyone and everything for war, so they're not, surprised. The second thing is that the former NATO chief basically called out Trump and said that he's undermining NATO,
Mm,
and that Europe, which is interesting, finally, someone had a thought besides stating the obvious, that Europe needs to come up with its own defense group, basically, a mirror of NATO minus the United States, which
interesting.
is exactly what they need to do. I
Mm,
mean, this is an excellent proposal. And the third thing is, for over the past year, there have been, warnings like the loudest warnings I've seen from defense and intelligence officials. I've spoken to many over the past year and a half that Europe, various European countries are preparing for war. Now, there was a report that just came out, and this report specifically says if Ukraine agrees to any kind of compromises or, anything that jeopardizes the country, that Russia will attack the Baltics by 2027. I mean,
Oh,
this
really?
is a year and a half away from now, and that puts Estonia, Lithuania, um, and Latvia in danger. Now,
Mm.
these are NATO countries, and don't forget Lithuania as well as Poland. I mean, they're both surrounded because they have Belarus, and Russia basically, softly annexed
Mm.
Belarus and uses it as their military playground. So
Let me just,
Europe understands
yeah.
if anything goes wrong, they are not far behind. So.
Let me just clarify that report you're talking about saying 2027 an attack on the Baltics. Who's that by? And it's what's it? It's the precondition is if there is a deal, then it looks like the is that what they were saying that in
Yes.
2077. So
If Ukraine makes compromises, so the report
mm,
was put together. Forgive me, I'm not a think tank person,
mm.
even though I am a senior fellow at one. International uh, IISS, something for strategic studies,
Okay.
a very well-known think tank center. Um, and they put a report basically that should Ukraine compromise, this will give Russia, embolden Russia, and give Russia time to basically regroup and strengthen, and that they will, instead of fully going after Kiev, that they'll move towards Baltic country. And I can tell you, as someone who watches Russian news, I mean, I can tell you a decade ago, for fun, for entertainment. This is how twisted the society is. They would have people on with military maps, showing how quick they could take the Baltics, 48 hours, which we see. I mean, they thought Ukraine was
Yeah.
3 days, and we saw how that 3 days went. But I mean, it's a very, very serious concern. So Trump and Putin can do whatever they want. It's not gonna, it's irrelevant because Europe has its own interest. Ukraine has its own interest. Ukraine needs to, you know, protect their people and get their children back. And Europe needs to stop Russia from moving forward and moving into other European countries. And Finland is at risk.
Mm.
Poland is at risk. The Baltics are at risk. I mean, you literally have so many countries in the path of Russia, and they all are coming up different timelines, but they all said that before 2030, there will be a major war on European soil if Russia is not defeated in Ukraine and severely weakened.
So yeah, that implies severely weakened or the economy being severely weakened. That's the only way you can actually get through this. It doesn't matter if there's a ceasefire deal in many ways.
and and just to again reiterate, because people in America don't seem to understand this, the media, I mean, um Putin cannot stop his war. His whole country is in a war economy.
Mm.
If Putin stops the war, they are going to be slammed with, what happened in the late 1990s is going to be like child's play. It's going to be the worst stagflation. Everything right now is on a war economy. This is what is propping up. And the second thing that people need to understand, which a lot of people don't understand the Russian mentality, if Putin ever stops this war without getting some kind of gains, he will be hung. I mean, the Russian people, every single leader historically has been taken down, and then in Gorbachev case, the whole Soviet Union collapsed because they weren't strong enough. They lost a war or something didn't go right. In the case of Gorbachev, it was the Soviet-Afghan war that led to the downfall. They want a strong leader, and a strong leader must deliver. And the minute a leader wavers, his own life is in danger because he will be taken out. So,
Mm.
I mean, there are things that's more complicated than Trump running around, you know, and screaming like, "Oh yeah, we got a deal." No, you don't have a deal. You don't understand the Ukrainian side. You don't understand, that Zelensky is not in charge. It's the civil society, and no one in Ukraine is going to allow anyone in leader in Ukraine to betray the Ukrainian people, especially after how many died, to make any kind of concessions that jeopardize Ukrainians' future. And the last thing I'll say, and I've
Mm.
said it forever, Ukrainians, they have been fighting, and this is again going back decades and decades. We could go to Stalin, Holodomor, and what the Russians have done. Ukrainians have been fighting for over a decade now. They don't think that things are going to get better in their generation. They're fighting for their
Mm.
grandchildren's future.
Mm.
They're not fighting short sighted that we need to fight right now to see gains. If they know they have a chance of securing finally peace after centuries in 50 years, this is a sacrifice worth making.
And that's a timeline maybe that we all need to be thinking about as we proceed in this really changing world. Olga Lautman, your analysis is always fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Really, really knowledgeable and brilliant. And everyone should listen to that analysis over and over again just to understand exactly what the stakes are. Let's move on to the other stories on the Trump Tourney Tracker for day 115. This is a really concerning story that you really point out on your tracker about Tulsi Gabbard, who's moving aggressively now to centralize all of America's intelligence apparatus under her. She's taking direct control of the president's daily brief. I don't think that's
Yeah.
ever happened
No.
in the past. It's been the CIA that's been doing that. She's also seized authority over the National Intelligence Council. She's removing acting leadership and also placing it under her direct oversight. This is a fundamental shift, right? I mean, we've now got the supposed office of, it's a broad-ranging coordination role that she's supposed to be playing, but she's taking everything under her wing and being the conduit to Donald Trump for everything.
And to Russia.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
it's really
we all know her, fealty to Russia. Yeah, no, it is extremely concerning. This has never been done, at least not in, modern history. The CIA assembles these reports, it's assembled there. And, the fact that she is seizing control over all these processes and departments. I mean, this should trouble every American. I understand, we don't see the national security threats. It's not something you walk out of your house and deal with on a daily basis. But I mean, this puts everyone in danger. I mean, this puts Americans on U.S. soil in danger. This puts, Americans serving in danger. And then, frankly, I mean, I don't understand why no one is stopping this. Something needs to be done because this consolidation of power is too dangerous.
You say that she's, we know her as a Russian connected entity. We know she's probably an asset, or at least maybe even an agent. Who knows? But tell us a little bit more about what you know about how tied she is to the Kremlin, because really this puts her as a daily presidential briefing person. This basically puts like a Putin mouthpiece right in front of Trump every day.
Or, or as we had it in the Soviet Union, having, satellite intelligence agencies
Mm.
that the KGB controlled. I mean, this is frankly what it is. So she now how you call it? She were covered up for Assad, and basically add what people need to understand when Assad was carrying out his atrocities and he murdered upwards of 750 thousand
Wow.
Syrians. I mean, and Russia officially entered in 2015, but my sources, including a journalist who was on the ground, tell me it was as early as 2012 that the Russians were already there propping him up. Um, so he used chemical weapons on people. I mean, it was multiple times. And she basically, what Russia did with their disinformation at the time, they were running, disinformation for serious purposes, discrediting and attacking anyone who was trying to shine light to what was happening in Syria. We saw what happened with the White Helmets, which is a civil society group of volunteers, who were trying to assist any way they can with anyone who needed help to avoid Assad's mass graves. And then At the same time, Russia was running disinformation, with their annexation of Crimea. So this woman, an American, decides that Russia is correct and Assad is correct, and she, says that no chemical weapons happened there. It wasn't the Assad regime who put it out, and I mean, I followed it closely back then. Russia was putting out disinformation that the U.S. is the one who released the chemical weapons. I mean, a whole range of theories. Opposition released the chemical weapons. It was Assad. I mean, it's been proven people have been prosecuted in international court. And then now for the other fact, I mean, she for at least a decade has mimicked Russia's propaganda. She shares RT,
Mm.
and like for someone who served in the military, I mean, you would think she would know better not to
Oh,
repost RT and to push this, especially when people told her, like, no, this is Russian disinformation. And I'm sure people, when she was in Congress and, and afterwards told her this, and she, I mean, it's someone, basically someone who should frankly have nothing, no, proximity to U.S. intelligence or U.S. national security, because this endangers all of us. And the fact now she's really changing the structure of how things works, I mean,
that's very
uh,
scary. It's very
yeah.
scary. I mean, she really is an operative for the Russians. And the other thing that's also happening around Donald Trump is the rearrangement of the National Security Council, which is a really important part of the way the executive works. There's a lot of people there that are now going to be cut down. There used to be 150 people, I think. Now there's going to be 50 in
Yes.
Marco Rubio's new administration of the NSC. But this is also changing their way they operate. I mean, in the past, they've sort of been policy advisors to
Yes.
the president, but now you're saying they're going to be acting in a different way. What are they going to be doing now?
So the National Security Council is an assembly of experts, that the
Hmm.
president picks. Sometimes they move through, stay, through different administrations who know the region that they're talking about. And they make recommendations, after weighing all the options on the best responses, the best tactics and whatnot. Um, Here, Rubio not only wants to gut it to 50 people, but he also wants to basically turn the National Security Council, instead of providing recommendations, basically just carrying out what Trump says.
Hmm.
And that's it, no input. I mean, this is how
Hmm.
authoritarian regimes work. This is exactly, Putin is the one who hands down the orders. He doesn't listen to recommendations. People, do not give recommendations. They'll be thrown into jail. So, basically, Trump is structuring the government here the same way. So, whatever he said goes. He gives the recommendations, he gives the orders, and everyone, basically, every agency will be yes, 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 yes. And
And it's
I
important to
mean,
remember the NSC has, each of these people are in charge of the desks at NSC, if they're the Africa desk or the Europe desk. I mean, they have a broad range of inputs that they get from diplomats. They get input from a whole lot of people before they give any policy up or any policy suggestions up to the president.
absolutely. Yeah,
And now that's just
absolutely.
being taken away, which means the president's will is going to be the only thing that is acted on. And just the operational part of the NSC, which is the part that goes out there and does the actions, that seems like they're going to keep that intact. But any of the policy discussions, which means taking any of everyone else's concerns into account and really understanding the implications of what it
And
is
the
that they're
region.
doing, yeah, and
And
the
the
region,
region.
and that means
And
they'll be completely, it sounds like they're like cocooning him in this like in a very dangerous bubble, that
you
he's
know
he's
who's
got tells.
cocooned like that? Putin.
It's true. It's true. Putin, and it's funny they're accusing
Putin.
Biden of being cocooned, but if you really look at what they're doing, if Tulsi's going to give him all the information from intelligence that's already Putin filtered, and now he's going to have this NSC relationship with, which is just going to be about execution of his orders. I mean, it sounds like a diplomatic hit squad. Really, it doesn't even sound like that they'll be, not really a policy body anymore.
This is how, why do you think Putin, thought that he can take Ukraine in, what was it, 5 days, four
It's
days, 3 days?
3 days, I
Because
think.
he was told this. He was told this. This is the information he was provided. He said, will we be able to take it quick? Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes, yes, yes. Or da, da, da. And
Yeah.
that's it. And, This is exactly the same situation happening here. And then, Marco Rubio's playing this hat of the national security advisor in his other hat of the, Secretary of State. We just need to add that he's also basically closing consulates around the globe and firing ambassadors. And I mean, we have a big mess happening. We're going to have so many blind spots, I cannot tell you. I mean, if we don't have terrorist attacks, within the next few years, it will be only by some kind of a miracle that happened, not because of what they're doing.
Speaking of terrorism attack, we've just one time for a little bit, one last story, which is that the Republicans have inserted a stop terror financing bill into their new tax package. Now, it's not actually designed to fight terrorists, it's designed to fight nonprofit organizations that if they
Hmm.
suspect that you're in any way, I don't even know what they'll do. If they just suspect you of anything, they can label you a terrorist organization or aligned with a terrorist organization. This is very frightening for a lot of nonprofits that can deal with immigrant groups or any real nonprofits out there.
And this, whoever's here and who's, is American, please call your Congress for this. Let them know that we know what they're doing. Because this is extremely dangerous. First of all, to Trump, he labels everyone a terrorist. Right now, Harvard is harboring terrorists and all the universities. Don't forget Antifa. That's, right now they're focused on quote unquote anti-Semitism and immigrants. But trust me, Antifa is going to be labeled a terrorist organization next.
Mm,
There is no Antifa. I mean, what is Antifa? It's a loose group of people
yeah.
who are anti-fascist, and that means that any one of us who speak out and any organization, propping up democracy, disability rights, Medicaid, anything that is against Trump's agenda is going to be labeled a terrorist organization. And then from there, not only, they'll be under basically not allowed to operate. This terrorist clause, and this is why it's so important for people to call. This terrorist clause is equivalent to what in Russia they did by labeling everyone a foreign agent.
Mm.
Anyone who is against the Kremlin, whether it's media, whether it's NGOs, whether it's individual people, podcasters, influencers, you name it. If
We're
they
labeled a
say
terrorist.
something is not in line, they are labeled foreign agents. This is the same equivalent, except here they're using terrorists.
So
So,
that's a very important warning. You're saying that this tax bill is really on the bubble still. There's still potential that it may not get passed. So everyone needs to do call the Congress people and make sure that they know that you're opposed to this idea. And also people need to start understanding that terrorism is a label that's going to be misused in the future. That it's not going to be applied to the right in the right way we've expected it. Of course, the irony is that the only person who's dealing with terrorists right now is Donald Trump. He's there in Qatar. He's there talking to Hezbollah, not Hezbollah. I'm sorry, the Iranians,
might
which is
as well
basically might as well
be.
be so Hezbollah. And then he's also talking to the Syrian leader, who's a former Al Qaeda guy. And he seems to be okay dealing with those things. He doesn't get any.
MBS.
Yeah,
MBS. I
yeah.
mean, at the same time that he's there, you have 9/11 families who are asking, can you please extradite the people who killed us here? And,
Unbelievable.
he is sitting there, not to mention MBS, uh, killed a journalist, an American, green card holder,
Mm,
resident, Khashoggi, I mean, in the most brutal fashion,
mm.
cutting him up in pieces so
Talk
he
about
can't be a.
terrorism.
Exactly. So I mean, so the Saudis and Qataris and they're the ones who actually fund terrorists, no longer terrorists, but Democrats, people who are fighting for disability or civil rights rollbacks, these are terrorists.
Those are going to be
The
labeled
judges
terrorists.
will be terrorists also because they're soon.
It's so terrifying what's going on, and the pace of it is really frightening. And as we, see today, what's going on with the Ukraine talks, as you called it, it's theater, and the surrounding of Donald Trump in this cocoon with Tulsi Gabbard on the one hand, and
Oh, a
Rubio on the
fellow
other hand.
Ukrainian. Hi.
Yeah, it's really a challenging situation. The people are saying this. It's sort of like we're entering this fascist period now of the Trump administration. It's going to get even more frightening
Oh,
as we
absolutely.
move
We've
ahead.
seen nothing yet. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as we've seen, trust me, there. There's a lot more coming. And again, it's up to us to stop it and push back against it.
And that is why you do the Trump Attorney Tracker, the most important source for anything to do with authoritarian creep. And everyone can see it daily at trumpattorneytracker.substack.com. That's Olga Lautman's incredible work as she keeps track of all the autocracy that's being introduced into our country by the administration. My name is Zev Shalev, and I can find my work at narrative.org, Narativ.org. Thank you for being here. And thanks again, Olga, for doing such great work. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye. See you
Bye.
tomorrow.